Good morning, everyone. In our last video, you saw us harvest this beautiful cow moose. We are back at the cabin. We're gonna get started processing it. We're gonna do a ton of different things with this moose. We're gonna do steaks, we're gonna do roasts, we're going to do a bunch of ground burger meat. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna head inside and Arielle is actually gonna render down some of this moose fat into lard. So we already have the whole carcass completely broken down. It's all in the freezer. We got all the stuff we're gonna be using to make our burger meat, and then I'm just grabbing the lard and bringing it inside.
Before we get started on processing the moose, we're going to be working on the fat that we have from the moose. And I'm actually really excited for this. We have never rendered fat from a wild game animal. We've done lard from pork and we have done tallow from beef. So this should be really exciting. And unfortunately, the fat is very dirty in itself. So I think that what I'm gonna have to do is a little bit of like a two-step process. I'm gonna heat everything up first until it's liquid, strain it, get all that icky stuff out that we don't want, and then we're going to be actually putting it back on the heat and getting all that water to evaporate so it's good for storage. So it is not the prettiest fat. I have some organ fat, and we have some of the fat that was along the back, which looks a little bit different. There's a lot of that. It's a lot of fat in general, so it's going to take some time, probably more than one pot. And we have a really awesome Dutch oven here that was gifted to us, and it is just awesome. It's huge. I think it'll do the job. So we're gonna get as much in here as I can fit. We're gonna get this started, and then we're going to start processing our moose. And while we're doing that, we're gonna be keeping an eye on this.
So in this bag is some of the best moose meat in our opinion, and that is the back straps and the tenderloins. We're gonna get these all cleaned up, and we're actually gonna be vacuum sealing these today. This is part of the back strap. This is just half of one of them, and back strap basically just runs along the spine of an animal, and it is a delicious cut. That's why we like turning this into steaks. Just gonna clean it up a tiny bit, and we're gonna cut it into about 1-inch thick steaks. All right, nice, beautiful steak. So one thing we found makes processing or butchering an animal a little easier is to have it extremely cold or almost frozen. So this back strap was all in the freezer from when we got home yesterday. So it's probably been about, I don't know, under 24 hours. So it's not frozen, but it's extremely cold. And then when we actually go to grind our meat that we're gonna make into our burger meat, that's gonna be almost frozen, and that's gonna be perfect. It's way easier to grind meat when it's almost frozen. That is one big bowl of back strap. That's one of the back straps. I'm gonna put this aside. Arielle's gonna come in here. She's gonna start vacuum packing them, and I'm gonna keep cutting up the back strap, and then I'm also gonna cut up the tenderloin, and I think we got one roast in here we'll have to cut up. Look at that.
This back strap?
This back strap. Back straps are all done and packaged, and this is one of the tenderloins. And I'm not gonna do this in steaks, I'm actually gonna do this in kind of big chunks, and we'll probably end up baking this in the oven. Okay, so we're gonna finish packaging the tenderloin up, and I found one more little piece of back strap we're gonna do, and then we're gonna bring one of the quarters in here and start working on that. All right, so we are gonna start working on one of the quarters. We're gonna grab the front quarter, and basically that's all gonna be used for burger meat, so it's gonna get ground up, so it doesn't have to be pretty. We have to get all the meat off the bone. That's part of it. That's the bottom ankle we had to cut off so it would fit in the ice chest. And that's the rest.
Putting it in on the ground.
It really costs us a lot of time, maybe.
It does. I just swear it does. Let's flip her over.
Oh,
Nice job.
oh, felt heavier than the last one.
And sometimes they are, depending upon how you cut them. We're moving right along to the other front quarter. Still have a lot of work to do. We have all of the grinding to do. I think we're going to start it tonight. We may just get it through the first round,
Yeah.
and then we'll pick back up probably tomorrow. We're just going to keep chugging along.
It is 7:20 at night. We're going to start grinding the meat. We're going to run it through one time on the coarse grinder, and we're going to see how long it's going to take. I'm thinking probably going to take at least an hour to get through one time. Just try to dump all the water out.
Yeah, get all of this right there. I take that as love. Can you just do me a favor and look at that?
Son of a gun.
It's big. Jason, do that.
Oh my god. That's your hair. Wasn't the moose's, right? We're halfway done grinding the meat the first time through, so we're only the quarter way done. But these, I'm estimating to be about 50 pounds each, and then the 2 tubs that we have out in the freezer, I'm pretty sure those are even heavier. So we're gonna have a lot of ground moose meat. This is gonna be awesome. So I'm gonna bring these out to the freezer, get them in there, and I'm gonna bring the other stuff in, and we're gonna grind it.
So we got it finished. Well, partially finished. It is officially 2 hours after when we first started. We didn't really take any breaks at all, so the grinder was pretty much running continuously, which is awesome. Love this grinder. And we're gonna take a break now. We have to go run to the store, get even more ice, and then we're gonna pick back up tomorrow with another 10-hour work day again. We'll see you tomorrow. Good morning. We are picking right back up with the processing today. We started with straining our lard that we were rendering yesterday. It actually turned out really, really beautiful. It's a nice golden color and it should solidify to a white color. I'm going to put this aside and get the second batch going. Yesterday I realized immediately once we started the first batch that the fat should be ground first. It makes for a just overall better end product and you get a lot more of it. So we're going to be starting with that first. I'm going to put this aside and get some of the fat chopped up into smaller pieces so we can get it in the grinder. Yeah,
Just pure fat. And I can just dump it straight in that pot.
for sure. You're gonna have some weird pieces in there too. That's just stuff I picked through, so don't be alarmed.
Just like the meat that we ground yesterday was partially frozen, this fat is also partially frozen, and it makes all the difference when you're grinding a lot of meat. This little grinders have no trouble putting this all through. And the burger meat that we ground last night, that has been sitting in the freezer for probably like, I don't know, 13 or 14 hours. So that's gonna be nice and cold too. And as soon as we're done with this and we get it on the stove, we're gonna start on that next. We're gonna be grinding it through the small plate on the grinder.
Actually, I'm gonna turn it off since you're gonna give that a go.
We took a break and we were officially halfway done with our ground moose meat. And I just started this second batch and I noticed the grinder is kind of clogging up on me. So I've never sharpened that little cutting wheel, the little star, or this. So I took them out in the Connex and I sharpened them up the best I could. And I want to put it back together and see if it works any better. Well, that did it. That was the key. I sharpened up that plate and a little star cutting wheel, and she's back to ripping through this meat. And about this grinder, I believe it's called the Cabela's Deluxe Grinder. I think it's like a 1 horsepower, but we've had this thing for over 5 years. We have nothing but great things to say about this. We've done a ton of animals with this, and we've never had a single problem.
Gotta go through again.
Yeah, it was the stuff that was in the blade.
What I'll do is I'll just clean up that stuff and then I'll just leave it side clean. So we use it again. Oh, we cannot forget. Let's save a big patty for ourselves.
It's been a long day of grinding meat, so we're taking a little break. We got 3 out of the 4 buckets done already, completely packaged and in the freezer. So we're gonna eat some moose patties real quick and feed the animals, and then we're gonna get back to it.
What do you put in the salt and pepper?
Salt and pepper. Oh. It's like,
Why do I want like sweetness with it?
really?
I think I'm just so deprived and hungry.
You want the sweetness with
I'm
it?
trying to get dessert with like lunch and dinner all in one.
I think this would be really good with just mayonnaise, pickle, and lettuce on a bun. Well, it has been one heck of a day. That was 130 pounds of ground moose meat, all ground through the grinder and packaged and in the freezer. That is going to be delicious this winter. Last season when we got our roadkill moose, we actually cut it with 2% pork fat, and we decided this time to just do 100% moose meat, and we're really glad we did. It turned out great. We both feel like it really doesn't need any extra fat, so we're glad we went that route. Another thing we did different is when we got our roadkill moose, we packaged it in saran wrap and then we used butcher paper, which we love to do. It's a great way to package your meat. We like it better than vacuum sealing. It's a lot cheaper. We actually ran out of butcher paper and we didn't get our shipment in time for our moose, so we went to a local store and they had these packages that you put your wild game meat in, and these are 1 pound packages. We actually really like these. They're pretty affordable and they're very strong. So another good way to package our meat. That's it for tonight. We totally ran out of time. We're gonna pick up on the lard tomorrow. We still have the 2 hindquarters that we need to cut into roast, but we're gonna hit the sack because it's late.
We're getting all set to jar our tallow. So everything went really well, actually. This was our first time doing it with a wild game animal and it turned out awesome. In fact, we tried it last night with some biscuits and it was really, really good. It's a lot like tallow from beef. So we're more familiar with pork and lard, but this is also really great and it's something we get to use from the moose. This is a pot that it looks like where it's hardened. It's really beautiful. You can see we scooped out of there. So we've got to get it hot. And we're heating up some jars too. We're basically going to be open kettling it because once lard has been rendered and all the water's out of it, it won't go rancid. So we're just going to put it in some hot jars, put some warm lids on, and then that's how it's going to store. Our oil is super hot. There is no bubbles, meaning there's no water. And I'm going to be very careful with it because it's really, really, really hot. We're going to strain it one more time. I've already strained it, but just because we use kind of some dirty fat and an older Dutch oven, I'm going to strain it again just to make sure it comes out really clean. And then we'll put it in our jars. We've got our fat strained again and we are getting the jars out. I've got to make sure they don't have any water on them because I don't want to introduce any back into the fat. So if you didn't already know this, I'm pretty obsessed with animal fat. I really like lard and I really like, well again, we're new to tallow, but I really like just animal fat. And it seems like a tedious process because it really is, but it is such a useful fat for cooking, mainly for us is what we use it for a lot, but it has so many other purposes that we've never even tried. We may look into that, but we usually use a lot in a year for cooking. And my absolute favorite part about it is that when you're pouring it, you know, it's this golden, light golden color, and then it turns white when it dries. It's beautiful. All right, these are just gonna seal on their own, and we have one more batch to do. I think we're gonna get about 16 pints. We would have gotten more had I remembered to grind up the fat. You know, chopping up the fat into small pieces or grinding it makes a huge difference. You will get so much more fat. So if you're ever doing this, make sure to do that. Relating.
I don't know how much that thing weighs.
How much do you think it weighs? Let's lift it together and see if we can tell. Just a little off the ground.
I just washed my hands.
I know, but that's...
Oh, I gotta wash my hands.
Hold on. I never lifted the heavy side. Are you playing jokes? Wait! You're playing jokes?
Oh, I'm not. It's that heavy.
No, it's
It's
not.
like a rock. It like doesn't want to move. It's so heavy.
Like, I feel like that's over 100 pounds.
It's over 100 pounds. Well, we're all finished up with the lard and we're moving on to the hindquarters. I believe this is the back right-hand side of the moose. This thing is heavy. I'm really surprised I could lift that on my own. Guess I didn't know my own strength. Really surprised I was able to lift that thing up here on the table, but we're gonna get started on this. I think it's about noon already in the day. The plan with this is to cut some really nice roasts and just package those like that. And then whatever we have left on here, just some of the trim meat, things like that, maybe around the bone, we're gonna fire up the grinder again, run it through the coarse and the fine, and I think we're actually gonna add some seasonings and make some sausage with that.
Okay, we're good. We're solid. We made it halfway. Okay, there we go. Working on this huge muscle up front. Trying to get it off in one piece for Eric because I want to save this for roast. The leg is just full of beautiful, beautiful muscles. 20 pounds? Maybe 20 pounds? Huge muscle. Beautiful piece of meat that we need to get cleaned up. I think it weighs 20 pounds. I don't know though. 20-ish? Maybe a little more? There we go.
She's ready to be roasted, like Charlie Sheen.
We're almost done with the leg. Just starting to break apart the bones. We're gonna be making bone broth tomorrow. We have lots of roasts and quite a bit of trim meat that we're gonna be using for sausage, which is awesome. Wasn't quite anticipating that. So when we're done with this, we're gonna grab the other hindquarter and get started on that. That is a bone.
It's the hillbilly bone, ba-bone, ba-bone, ba-bone. Hillbilly bone, ba-bone.
It's just a piece.
We ended up with a ton of roast and we got quite a bit of meat for grinding into sausage. We're gonna take it all out to the freezer and we're gonna get to work on that other leg.
We decided to multitask and get some of our bone broth started. So we have lots of bones and some water. We can only fill this up about 2/3 of the way. And then a whole bunch of herbs that we're gonna be straining anyways. Once it's done, I'm gonna pressure can this for about 2 hours and then we will probably can it tomorrow.
Okay, those are roasts. We're getting these roasts put away in the freezer. I think we got a little over 50 pounds of meat just with the roast, and then we have all the ground meat in there. And then I also have the sausage meat that I ground through once. I have it in the freezer, and I think I'm gonna wait till tomorrow morning to grind that through a second time. I wanna get this a lot colder and a little firmer. We're just about done grinding the sausage meat through the grinder on the fine plate, and I'm gonna add some ingredients to our sausage. I've got a bunch of herbs here. We're doing thyme, parsley, and sage. And then I've got a little bit of ginger, and I've got a bunch of garlic. So I'm gonna add the rest of our ingredients, and I have like a sausage seasoning mix that has like salt and paprika, cayenne, a few things like that. We're doing black pepper, red pepper flakes, and cumin seed. I'm just gonna sprinkle this over the top, and then we're gonna mix this whole thing together. Okay, we've got everything all incorporated together, and it smells really good, but we're gonna cook up a small piece real quick and make sure we like the way it tastes before we put it in packages. All right, the meat turned out really good. We are gonna add a little bit more of this sausage seasoning that I have, which was like the cayenne, the paprika, and the salt. And then it's not too spicy, so we're gonna add some more red pepper flakes. Then we're gonna give it one more mix. We're gonna clean up the grinder, get this out of here, and we're gonna get this put in packages and in the freezer. Well everyone, all of our hard work has finally paid off. We officially have that whole entire moose, at least the meat, in the freezer. Let's go over what we got. For back straps and tenderloins, we ended up with 46 pounds. Ground burger meat, we ended up with 132 pounds. The sausage that we just finished, we ended up with 36 pounds. And the roasts together were 64 pounds, and that is a grand total of 278 pounds of pure meat, which is awesome. This is a 14, maybe a 14 and a half cubic foot freezer. So it's a really big freezer. You could definitely fit a full-size bull moose in one of these freezers. I'd say this moose that we did took up a little over half of this freezer. And what else we have in here is mainly just dog food. We have some meat that we processed a while ago for them. We have some fish that's frozen in there for them. And then we do have a little bit of produce, but we try not to keep a lot of our produce in the freezer. As far as how we run the freezer, because we are off grid, it simply just runs off our solar system. Once this thing gets cold, it actually doesn't really draw too much power. And then when winter comes, we just completely unplug it and it just stays frozen out here on its own. All in all, we got a ton of great stuff from this. We have the tallow that's inside, and I think the only thing we have left to do is finish up canning the bone broth. So we're gonna head inside and do that.
We're working on our bone broth again, and this is our second batch. We had to boil the bones or pressure can them for 3 hours each batch. It took forever because they are super dense bones, and we know they're done now, and the minerals have started breaking down into the liquid because the bones themselves are starting to become kind of like chalky. The next step is to remove the bones from this broth, and then I'm going to strain it, and we're going to get some jars ready, and then we're going to clean out our pressure canner and start pressure canning the bone broth. This is what the bone broth looks like that we cooked yesterday. And if I just give it a little stir, all that oil will mix in. So I have to get this back on the stove, heat it up, and then put it in the jars, and then we'll be pressure canning it. Eric and I are super big fans of this broth. We also have some fish stock and chicken stock from this year. And we even have some bone broth from the moose that we got on the roadkill list. But this stuff is so versatile for us. It's great for if you're cooking up rice, beans. We use it a lot for soups in the winter. That's probably one of our favorite ways to use it. It is super rich and flavorful, and it by far does not compare to something you can find in the grocery store. But if you can get your hand on some bones, you can make this stuff at home. All right, we are finally finished with processing the moose and making all the things that we wanted to make out of it. We have our tallow here. We ended up with 18 jars, and then we have 21 jars of bone broth. We're both so excited with how much we were able to get from that moose. I definitely think what we got is going to last us over a year, which is awesome. I've got to get these put away, but we're not going to end the video quite yet because we have to cook up some moose.